Hi, I'm Philip Hodgetts and I care about metadata. I want to talk to you today about a new metadata format that's been creeping into our editing software, Open Timeline I/O. It's the new XML. I'm going to talk about where it came from, why it exists, and what we've been doing with it. Open Timeline I/O, or OTIO for people who don't want to write that much, or OTO for people who don't want to say that much, is an open source format for describing editorial timelines. It doesn't try to be a nonlinear editor. It's not a media container. It just tries to tell the truth about what's in a sequence. Clips, tracks, transitions, timing, markers, and metadata. Or in other words, the interesting bits. Open Timeline I/O evolved in 2018 from the animation and visual effects worlds, where a timeline is more a communicate between departments than it is any sort of finished product. It was intended as a super EDL. In those worlds, editorial hands off to visual effects hands off to animation hands off to lighting hands back to editorial, and so on, until somebody finally approves something or time runs out. Nobody wanted to lose metadata in these transfers, and that's where OTO comes in. It allows each department to add their metadata to the file without conflicting with any other department's need, even if they're the only department that will ever read that metadata again. Traditional interchange formats were never really designed for this kind of multi-department long-distance relationship. We nearly got there with classic Final Cut Pro XML. AAF never quite got critical mass, and EDLs are not as far in the past as you'd hope. But we are coalescing around OTO as a common metadata format. Flexibility is both a strength and a weakness for OTO. An OTO file will tell you where to look for the clip and track metadata, but there's no guarantee that the data will be in a format that can be used. It's up to the importing app to understand the OTO file. So, an OTO file that round-trips successfully in one editor may show no data when opened in another editor because it contains app-specific metadata. Today, OTO has support from Vinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere Pro, Avid Media Composer, Autodesk RV, Foundry's Nuke, and a few others. Since each editor has its own ideas how timelines should work, there's no universal agreement about how metadata should be expressed in an OTO file. OTO does a great job of normalizing sequence metadata, but understanding an OTO file still means understanding the quirks of each file, and that's where experience matters. At Intelligent Assistance, we've spent more than a decade translating editorial metadata between NLEs. We've learned a lot translating millions of timelines. And now, it's time to bring that expertise to the world of Open Timeline with more complete metadata. Our first Open Timeline-enabled tool is called Production Clip Reporter, which replaces the venerable Sequence Clip Reporter. Everything Sequence Clip Reporter could do via XML, Production Clip Reporter can do via XML and OTO. Production Clip Reporter reads OTO timelines from Media Composer, Premiere, or Resolve and turns them into clean, formatted Excel reports for producers, coordinators, post teams, music sheets, or client deliveries. Open Timeline I/O is opening up more metadata opportunities, and we're happy to support that evolution. You can learn more about Production Clip Reporter or Open Timeline I/O at intelligentassistance.com. Thank you for caring about metadata. Somebody has to.